That's the intro. Tyler's like, no way. Not happening. What's going on, guys? Luke Trukin, Lee Shelton. This is another episode of the Online Edge podcast coming to you again live in downtown McKinney.
That's very true. We are in downtown McKinney.
Except for the live part. This is going to come recorded later on.
Shoot. Just wish you weren't a liar.
I saw the red light on the camera and I just like, red. That means we're live, baby. We are live, but not that kind of live. Okay. All right. So, hey, we wanted to talk about content calendars, what they are, what to do, what you should think about when you're putting one together, why they're important, and anything else that goes along the lines of content, where their content calendars are. So, take it away.
All right. So content calendar is a semi-new term, and it's making sure that you have content that you can really post on your platforms, so that you are using that organic social approach. And whenever you hear the term content marketing, that's what it's talking about. Hey, we're getting content into our feeds, into our stories, so that we can stay in front of our customer in a consistent way. When we're thinking through content calendars, I want us to think through 5 different things, and I'm going to give them to you quick. This is going to be a quick, really power-packed episode that I really think is going to help you a lot. The first thing is the content itself. You want to make sure that you have content that is is a standard that you're comfortable with. So you've got it where you're proud of this. This represents you well. It's not a photo that you're like, I don't really want to use that photo. It's not a video that you're just like, I don't know about this one. It meets your standard of content. It can exceed it. That's incredible. But you want to have a floor to content that you don't allow your content to go underneath. So you get to set that, and that's industry to industry. If you're in the fashion industry, that floor is incredibly high. And if you're in the service industry, that floor's a little bit lower, and that's okay. You just have to know your audience, know your industry, but whatever you set that floor as, when you decide I'm not going to use something, man, be consistent at that, because you want that stuff to represent you well. So that's an understanding of content. You also want to make sure that the content is something that you can reproduce. So that's going to help you decide what your floor is. If you can
producing it, if you have one shot that's at the highest quality ever, and you don't feel like you're going to be able to reproduce that on an ongoing basis.
Well, let's word it this way. So what if you had a video that took you a year to make? It's going to be fantastic. Yeah. But you had one piece of content for the year. So that's going to set your standard at that point and with photos, like a lot of people don't realize, when you're doing product photography or something like that, it takes a long time to get one good, amazing image at that point. So you're going to want to make sure it's something that you can do enough of. So at the very beginning of a content calendar, what I would do is, maybe you don't even have any content yet. Sometimes content calendars are the best things to start with.
Yeah.
And you start with them. The date is 2 months out because you got to produce the content for it. At that point, what I would do is I'd make a decision of how many times a week do I need to post. If you're Gary Vaynerchuk, it's like 60 times a day on all the different platforms. It's insane what he's doing. And so you may be like, hey, I can't do that just yet. I can't do that just yet. Okay, no problem. So you may make a decision of, hey, I'm going to post to Facebook twice a week and Instagram 6 times a week. That may make sense for you. Okay, great. So now we have that. So we know how many we need. At this point, we need 7 a week, or 8 a week would be my math on that one. 2 on Facebook, 6 on Instagram. You may decide different platforms you want to be on. Awesome. Do not make the same content and post that to multiple different platforms. The reason for that is you are telling your clients or your customers, do not follow me on multiple platforms. Just follow me on one. You're going to see everything. Okay. So you want some content that is for Facebook and some content that is for Instagram. And if you're on LinkedIn, content that's for LinkedIn, content that's for YouTube. Pick your platforms that you feel like you can be consistent on. If you feel like you can be consistent on one platform, then pick the platform the majority of your customers on and use that one. If you feel like you can be consistent on 7 platforms, then you Pick 7 platforms and be consistent on it. That's awesome. But don't say we're going to be on everything. We're going to do everything. And then 2 weeks later, everything just kind of falls apart and you got one post up and it's the same one on all 7 platforms. So make those decisions up front as you're putting together the content platform. And I'm going to assume for the purpose of this conversation, you have 0 content. Make those decisions up front. We know we're not going to be able to be consistent on 3 platforms, but we can do 2. Great. Now you're gonna want to sit down and say, okay, what types of content are we gonna want to go up, or are we gonna want to produce on a regular basis? Text content is the easiest. Sitting down and actually writing something out, a few sentences out, great. You may say, hey, I can grab some images off of Unsplash or something like that, like really good looking images that we didn't necessarily create, but it fits really, really well with our industry. That's awesome. You're just going to want to make sure that other images that you post that is of you, your team, your jobs, your product, whatever it is, can hang. If you're going to start using stock footage, you're going to want to make sure that you can hang and be in the same the same standard. If that's the case, if you feel like you can do that, great. If not, then you're going to need to produce all your own content yourself, so that you're able to there's a thread running through that is consistent. Okay, so we've talked about the calendar in and of itself. I'm not going to tell you how often to post. You're going to have to decide how often can you post consistently. Whatever the answer to that question is how often you should post. If the answer is 100 times a day,
do it.
Then do it.
Yeah.
If the answer is 100 times a month, then do it. But whatever you can do and do it consistently is what you should do. Now you're going to want to think through the types of content. I've already mentioned text content, so just written content, photo content. That's something that's somewhat easy to produce because we have halfway decent photo machines in our hands. And so if this is what you got and this is your content creation machine, awesome. Then utilize this thing. Get a standard of quality when it comes to photos, and then go out and take some photos and make it awesome. If video is very quickly becoming kind of the standard of what is being the most interacted with, that kind of stuff, as far as content's concerned, great. But that's going to take a lot more time to produce than the photo side of stuff is concerned. And so you need to know that heading into that. Learn what you need to learn about that heading into that, and so that you can go from there. If that is motion graphics, great. Who's going to make those? How are we going to do that? What's our standard of quality when it comes to that? Awesome. There's a lot of different things that you can think through. So right now we're creating a piece of content for our company. So we're talking about content while creating content. Now, this podcast is going to be able to be viewed in whole, and we're going to be able to break down this podcast into a couple of smaller pieces of micro content that can go up on Facebook and our Instagram page and that kind of stuff. So that's how we think through content. So right now we're taking some time. We want to make sure we're adding value to you so that you know how to do this stuff, and we're adding value to our content on different platforms. So this whole podcast won't be available on Facebook and Instagram, but a component of it will be. And so we created really 3 pieces of content, maybe 4 or 5 pieces of content from one piece of content. So that's going to be that's called content bunching at that point, and that's going to be some little tricks that you can use that's going to help you to produce more.
You could even take this podcast and turn it into a blog post, because you take all of it and you separate the audio out of the text, and you just...
Exactly right. And so, and maybe 2 or 3 quotes from this thing could become something. It's a very good anchor of content. It's sitting down, kind of long form conversations, find some nuggets in that thing, and you've got some anchor content at that point. So anchor content might be you bring somebody in to do photos, and it's the entire day they're there and they're doing photos for you. And so you got like 6 months worth of photos in a day. That kind of stuff can happen, and that can be this pool of content that now I can pull from for forever. Older content that still makes sense today can be content that you can do that from. So we have content from a podcast, episode 1. Everything we said in that episode is still true, still holds water, still is applicable to today. So we could pull clips from there that we used 6 months ago and use those same clips again, because there's still clips that make sense. There's still clips that work. We could do that 2 years from now.
Yeah.
because most of the stuff that we're talking about is not so time sensitive.
Except for the COVID stuff.
Except for the COVID stuff.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I swear to God, I was about to say the same thing. 6 years of COVID-19.
Oh my gosh, please no.
But most of the stuff that we talk about is something that is going to be true 5 years from now. And if that's the case, we can pull that content back. It'll be funny going back and looking at what we looked like 5 years from now and that kind of stuff. But it's like, man, if it's true, then we can utilize that. So what ends up happening is you start creating this library of content. So one photo shoot turns into 3 photo shoots in a year, and 3 photo shoots in a year turns into 75 useful images that you can have. And maybe, you know, you don't have a consistent podcast, but maybe you have like 2 long podcasts that talk all about your business and what your business does. And those you just kind of break down into these small nuggets that you can consistently release on all these platforms. And what you got is this long stream of content now, a content library where you're not having to produce 60 pieces of content.
Yep.
Now you've got a ton of content that you can pull from. You've got this library that you can pull from. And if you're doing some new stuff, that's awesome, because the other stuff can kind of be brought back again, slightly repackaged and used. And you create this ecosystem of content where you're able to be more consistent than you ever dreamed about, because you have this library to pull from that today you don't have, you may not have it, but man, after 6 months of really paying attention and focus on content marketing, you'll develop this amazing library of content that you can consistently pull from. And now you've cut your work way, way down, because a lot of the stuff that you're posting was stuff that was produced a while back, but it's still true today. It still makes sense today. And you create this ecosystem where you're able to be more consistent than you ever imagined you would be able to, just by creating this content calendar and a content library that supports that calendar. And getting in front of your customers and clients on a consistent basis with your message and who you want to be.
Boom.
Shakalaka.
All right, we appreciate you guys tuning into this week's podcast. Thank you so much. Give us a like if you want to see more of our content as it's getting put out there every single week, every Friday. Give us a subscribe and just
love us.
Give us some love. Some real love. All right, we appreciate you guys. Catch you next week.